Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back to the GBC SBT page. Very happy to have you with us. And today we're going to be speaking with Padma Locana Krishna Prabhu, who's a wonderful devotee that I had the chance to meet a few years ago when I was a part of a seminar series that he was one of the leading devotees giving the seminars in Sridham Mayapur under the lead school developed by His Holiness Bhakti Rasayana Sagar Maharaja. And so during that presentation, Padma Locana Krishna Prabhu's presentations were one of the ones that stood out most for me. He has quite a lot of credential in the professional world and is also a very enthusiastic and steady devotee himself. So we're very happy to have us with him today.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you for being here. So Prabhu, why don't you just kick us off by sharing a little bit about what your experience was coming into Krishna consciousness? How did that work, and how have you managed to stick around thus far?
Right. So I was 19 years old when I was introduced to Krishna consciousness. Essentially, after my A-level exams, I was a relief teacher for about 6 months, and that was the time when I met a wonderful devotee who was another teacher in the same school, Sudarshan Prabhu. Yep. So he has been my inspiration actually in Krishna consciousness. He was the one who taught me about Prabhupada, about Lord Krishna, about the Bhagavat Gita, and that was really a turning point for me.
Where was that?
That was in Singapore, close to 31 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I was 19 years old at that time. Yeah. So it was, I started being a relief teacher on a Monday, on the 2nd of January 1989, and on that Saturday, I was invited by him to Saturday feast, and that really changed my life. So yeah, it was a big change for me, and I'm really so appreciative, for what he has done. And of course, along the way, I met many other devotees. Close to 5-6 years ago, I was initiated by His Holiness Bhakti Vigna Vinash Narasimha Swami Maharaj. Yeah. And just a regular householder.
Well, so that's your humility. Actually, you were just sharing before the interview started, you've been having some success with teaching Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam over Zoom during this pandemic. Can you share a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah, so close to 3 years ago, I was just a little passionate about bringing the Bhagavad Gita to the masses. So I worked with Sutapa Prabhu to, curate a 6 weeks program, really getting to the basics of what Bhagavad Gita is all about. What are some of the life lessons you can bring out of the Bhagavad Gita? And over the past 2.5 to 3 years, I've been doing this. So it's a nice six sessions course. Close to 360 to 400 newcomers have gone for the program, and
wonderful.
Yeah, and we have close to 60 to 80 of them continuing the journey. So the journey means on a weekly basis we have some Bhagavatam classes, some Bhakti Yoga, some Kirtan classes, etc. And close to 2.5 months ago, when the Singapore government announced the lockdown for us, that's when I approached them and I told them that, look, instead of having a once a week class, can we, transition to a daily class at 7:30 in the morning, so that, when we finish at about 8:45, we can all proceed to our regular work commitments. And they were all enthused. And yeah, we started about 2 months ago, and, on the average, we had close to 40 to 50 participants dialing in on a daily basis. So that was really inspiring for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
And the pandemic was a bit of an impetus for that, huh?
It was definitely an impetus for that. So, I mean, as devotees or as aspiring devotees, we're always asked to look at the bright side of things, try to be a little bit more optimistic, etc. And I must say that, this was like the silver lining for me, as far as the pandemic was concerned.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I mean, the preparation itself was quite rigorous, for each of the classes. And, I got the association of all these nice devotees, great discussions, etc. So that was really inspiring for me. And, I also called a number of other devotees to assist me. So as and when I had some really tough work commitments, I used to get a few other devotees to help me. So that was really nice.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, I think before we continue the discussion, I just wanted to cover your professional credential also, because you're no slouch in that realm either. And when the name Harvard comes out, usually we think of the university specific, but Harvard is actually a very big kind of organization itself. So specifically, what's your involvement with Harvard University and your work there?
Right. So I work for the corporate learning group of the Harvard Business School Publishing initiative. So I think most of you may have heard of the Harvard Business Review magazine.
Sure.
Yeah. So the same group, the same Harvard Business Review group has got another arm which is responsible for the corporate learning business of the school. So essentially what we do is we work with large corporations, with their C-suite leaders, with their organizational development teams to design and deliver programs at all levels. So, for example, you may have a middle managers program, which is looking at how do you evolve the middle managers to become senior leaders. What are some of the credentials you need to build in these people? What are some of the competencies you need to build in them, etc. So my work is, it's a pan-Asia responsibility where I work with large corporations. We have a nice team in Asia. We work with large companies like, for example, Petronas, like Ericsson, etc., to develop their leaders. Yeah. I've been in this role for about 7 years now.
So it's essentially organizational development offered by the Harvard Business Review conglomerate, and so multinational organizations. And your region is Singapore, Southeast Asia, kind of.
Yeah, it starts from New Zealand to Australia to the whole of Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Major
and the way we deliver the programs is by leveraging on the thought leaders who publish in the Harvard Business Review magazine, as well as professors the HBS professors, Harvard Business School professors. So we bring management insights and the thought leadership from the school, from the press, to programs in these corporations. The cornerstone of our case method. You have gone through some of these case methods during the program.
Yes. Yeah, I remember some of the content that you use there with those groups is what you brought to us in Mayapur. It was very helpful to look at our own community and our own functioning through those lenses. So that's actually what it brings us now. I wanted to hear what insights you've been receiving, or a lack of, from that community around the COVID situation. And I guess to start off, I would like to know how you've perceived that larger business community addressing the COVID pandemic as compared to other groups like religious groups, governments, etc. What are businesses doing right now? What's their thought short term and also long term?
So, I mean, this is really the worst crisis in the recent history of mankind. So it just shows basically how the world is a global village. Many companies have been badly affected, especially those who rely on a supply chain. On the other hand, technology companies have been really doing well during this pandemic. And something which I really reflect on is that it's amazing to see just how a few grams of virus, probably 1 to 2 grams of the virus was enough to wreak havoc throughout the whole world. This is really the potency of the Lord. No wars are required, and all of us are locked down in a lockdown situation in our homes. So what we have actually seen in some of the most progressive companies is that the mantra is basically, how do you adapt? How do you innovate, survive and thrive? Yeah. So it's adapt, innovate, survive, and thrive. How do you come up with new business models, new business processes, practices, models for collaboration, teamwork? So, companies which have been thriving are those which have adapted and innovated. Yeah. So,
do you think that mood of adaptation and innovation, is that the same for a government or a religious institution, or is that kind of unique to the business world?
well, maybe let me just spend a few minutes sharing with you what we have learned from the business world. So we did some extensive research on the companies who are emerging from this crisis in China. So some of the good stuff which they have done, some of the leading companies, they have been really great as far as communication is concerned, right? So gone are the days when the CEO is in his ivory tower and not really communicating with the frontline leaders, the people on the shop floor, etc. Gone are the days. Right now, the CEOs are coming and really communicating authentically, breaking down silos, expressing empathy, care, and safety. And this is really so impactful. And many of them are just very, very transparent and authentic, showing their vulnerability, that they are trying very, very hard, but they do not have all of these answers. And, I'll just like to draw an analogy to what Kauntaya Prabhu did a few weeks ago. And I felt it was really amazing. So he, during one of these meetings, I think it was one of these GBC meetings, he actually came out and he expressed to all the devotees that we have to take this pandemic very, very, very seriously. And of course he looked at things from the karma angle. If we have it and if we pass on to somebody else, there's also a heavy karmic implication on it. And he was really strong. I found that to be really important, and I found that to be really authentic, and I think that was a great communication on the part of Kauntaya Prabhu and GBC in being real about the situation, in explaining to everybody that this is the ground reality and we have to be really careful about it. Don't take things for granted. So, kudos to him for that, and it was an eye-opener even for me. And something else which we have learned from these companies who have emerged really positively is that they are able to reorganize and reorganize to enhance the decision making, breaking down silos, breaking down sometimes even the entire middle level, and just allowing the C-suite leaders to go directly to the ground levels, to the shop floor levels. More and more companies are becoming data-driven, leapfrogging onto digital transformation. There was a joke going around that, what has been the source of your digital transformation? Is it the CEO? Is it the chief technology officer? Or is it COVID? 90% of them said it was COVID. COVID was the impetus to leapfrog these companies in this digital transformation. And gone are the days where, you might take months, weeks, years to plan out projects, etc. Today, it's all about Agile. It's all about skunk work. Let's get a small team to work on this thing. Let's try. Let's fail. Let's fail early. Fail safe. Right. So companies are much, much more innovative because of this new paradigm. New ways of collaboration. So, for example, if you look at this large media group called Huanzi Media Group. They had produced a movie called Lost in Russia, and it was supposed to be sort of launched during the Chinese New Year time. They were not able to do that, and what they did was they collaborated with ByteDance, which is the owner of TikTok. And this collaboration allowed them to bring in 600 million views in just 2 days. So collaboration is the mantra. And there's a lot of focus on resilience and motivation. But of course, academic literature only tells you a little bit about resilience. They may not have the entire recipe. And I think Krishna Consciousness has a lot to offer organizations around this. And then there's another concept about psychological safety. Companies which really did well were those which provided this psychological safety to their teams. That look, we are in this war together. As far as possible, we will ensure that you are not made redundant. Even if that means cutting the C-suite leaders or the senior management's salaries by half or 60%, 70%, etc. That really provided a psychological safety to teams. And that's really important during these difficult times, because everybody is so worried about their jobs, etc. I mean, look at the definition of resilience. It's the rapidity by which a person recovers from the face of adversity and cope effectively. So most of these companies were able to do this. Most of the leaders were able to do this because of the psychological safety, maintaining a positive outlook. Yeah. And even in the corporations, you look at trust. That has become a big thing. Gone are the days when you're not sure whether people are working in their office, in their home offices, in the event that you allow them to work from home. But that has just been replaced with a higher level of trust amongst leaders for their people. Even KPIs have evolved. It's all about picture thinking right now.
What's KPI?
Oh, the performance indicators, key performance indicators.
So I hear a lot of potentially valuable lessons for our own community. One is that, which especially speaks to this effort that we're doing here with the GBC SBT, is this idea of the leaders kind of coming out of their ivory towers, as you said. But just generally in many top-down organizations, leaders are not accessible to the common people. When that happens, what's healthy about that? Why is that preferable to this kind of abstracted situation?
So accessibility to thought leaders, accessibility to the most senior leaders, the fact that these leaders are authentic, authentic meaning, they are working on their nature and they are not being hypocrites. All of this means so much for the teams in such organizations. People at the shop floor level, the first-time managers, the mid-level leaders, etc., they know that they are being cared for. May not be directly, but at least there is a voice on a weekly basis, addressing our concerns. Somebody's
thinking about me. It feels good.
Correct. That's right. That is the entire concept of psychological safety. And I think if you look at our organization, ISKCON, if you look at the brahmacharis, the grihastas, etc., who are full-time devotees, they have given their lives. They have given their lives to the mission. But at the same time, it's really interesting that I personally see that, most of our spiritual masters have become so accessible because of COVID. Gone were the days where you'll have to wait for 1 to 2 years before you hear your spiritual master. And today it's like, every other week, every other day, you can actually hear your spiritual master because of technologies like Zoom, etc. So that is bringing authenticity, that is bringing visibility, that is bringing care and concern to everyone. And I think that's really called for. And I think, all our leaders in the organization are doing a great job as far as, reaching out to the masses is concerned.
Wonderful.
That's my opinion. Not everyone may agree to this, but
Well, I think it's important to, as you're noting, these days the internet is flooded with opportunities to hear from our senior devotees in ways that, as you mentioned, it might take you a year or 2 years. Otherwise, previously, you'd have to wait until they came to your particular place, your particular yatra. You were able to go to them somehow. And now today, those same devotees have daily or weekly Zoom calls with their disciples, etc. So it's profound. Now, this brings us to the question of whether the business world is seeing these shifts of COVID, and it sounds like you've already indicated these seem like permanent trajectory changes rather than just some kind of temporary stopgap approach and then going back to so-called normal later. Are we seeing a new normal now with COVID?
Yeah, it's certainly a new normal. Even if we are able to find a cure, it's still going to be not the same as what it was previously. So it's a big time paradigm shift from the previous times. I mean, let's look at efficiencies. Previously, I would be on a flight at least once in 3 days. I've stopped flying since the last 4 months. And I think I've become much more efficient. There's no jet lag. I can work longer hours, much more productive. So that's one. So efficiencies have already kicked in, and I'm sure organizations will be wanting to reap the benefits of these efficiencies even in the new normal, even when there is a cure for the virus. I think another big challenge corporations will be facing is real estate costs. Most of the employees are able to work from home. What's going to happen to real estate costs? I personally feel there's much more of a work-life balance, but it might not be the case for everyone, because I know that due to COVID, due to work from home, many people are working additional hours, and it's like, you see your family only during your lunch break, and it's only for 10 minutes, and then you're back on your Zoom calls. So I think it's important to have a solid work-life balance. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier on about this flattened organizations. We are seeing flattened organizations. I mean, even if you look at executive education, which we focus on, gone are the days where you're going to bring people to Boston or bring people to Singapore for a program. Even the ideal program which Sagar Swami Maharaj is going to be organizing this year is going to be totally virtual. And you may find a cure for COVID-19. I just read in the papers today that there's another one more zoonotic contagion, from swines. It's already affecting many pig farmers. What's going to happen next? So I think it's really about leapfrogging into this reality. Yeah. And yeah, I think, you asked me about how it's, reshaping our world. I remember during my MBA days, there was a course called scenario planning, where you think of the worst case situation. And while I was having a chat with one of my friends, another devotee, I was thinking, maybe the entire concept of a virtual temple might be a new norm. I don't know. It can stay side by side with the physical temple. This transnational association which I spoke about, transnational, where you are able to address, leaders, or you are able to address, your teams, people from different geographic location at one go. This transnational association is going to be a new norm. I think we will also have to change our paradigms around association. It could be virtual associations instead of really meeting devotees face to face. But I think coming back to your question, Prabhuji, I think as an organization we really need to ask ourselves, why does our organization exist? Because businesses always ask themselves, tomorrow if suddenly we disappear, how will our clients be badly affected? How will they be affected? Coming back to Simon Sinek's point, really asking ourselves, what's the why behind our existence? Why do we exist? And then, moving forward, we should ask ourselves, who do we serve? Who are our customers? In the blatant business language, it would mean, who are our customers? Is it the devotees? Is it the wider congregation? Is it the public? Or is it other spiritual and non-spiritual organizations? Who are we serving, as ISKCON?
And how does an organization have that conversation? Because you have seniors who would ask that question, you have juniors, you have, so how does a big organization go about facilitating that conversation? Is it something that's just had amongst management, or do they involve the entirety of the employee base?
Yeah, so a world-class organization would hold focus group discussions with a diversity of leaders. When you bring the diversity together, that is where you are able to ensure that there is no groupthink. That's really so important. Otherwise, what's going to be happening is that I'm going to get my best friends to come in and have a discussion with me, and everybody's going to be thinking like me.
The echo chamber effect.
Pardon?
The echo chamber effect.
Yeah, this groupthink, lots of research around this. So it's important to bring the diversity together. Diversity could be gender diversity, different maturity within the organization, that kind of diversity, etc. And once we know who are the customers we are serving, it's important to ask ourselves, what are their new pain points which we want to address? What are the new pain points of devotees? What are the new pain points of the larger congregation, of the public, of maybe other spiritual organizations? And how can we rapidly evolve and shift our value proposition in this time of crisis? I think these are all very, very, very important business questions which I would normally ask my clients. And I think it's the same for any organization, be it a not-for-profit organization, a religious organization, etc. I think we need to move with the times.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a little bit of an elongated or...
No, it's, these are very important points, and each of them we could delve into, but I want to stay in a kind of principle direction that we're going. Your very detailed experience, of course. We have one comment on YouTube from David Shapiro, which I think maybe we can turn into a nice segue question. He's saying, I think the expectations towards the gurus and managers by disciples, devotees, has dramatically increased. The leaders must continue to step up to the challenge. More is now expected. If they disappoint, there will be a crisis of faith. So maybe if you could, Prabhu, just offer some tips to, it kind of circling back to that original point of now the management, you could say the mystique around management is kind of collapsing, and there's a need for very on-the-ground leadership. So what are some of those principles that you see successful companies, leaders exemplifying, and how can our ISKCON leaders also kind of step into those roles? Maybe, the techniques would be unfamiliar, and they could take some lessons that you've seen in the business world as to how organizational leaders are approaching this.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to address the question in terms of, how do you address it within ISKCON, okay? I'm just going to tell you, or I'm just going to be sharing with you what we have learned from best practices in organization. It's coming back to the earlier point which I made around communication, around being authentic, breaking down boundaries, going to the ground levels. Over at Harvard Business School Publishing, I've got a call with the CEO of the organization addressing 500 of the employees twice a week. And he's not shy to express to everybody that, oh, this is what I did this morning. These are the dishes I cooked. This is my passion. And this is how I bring my extended passion to work. Very, very authentic. I'm not expecting that from ISKCON. I'm just telling you what some of the best organizations are doing.
I appreciate it.
And so it's about breaking the boundaries. It's about reconnecting with the ground. it's about providing a safe haven to all the employees. It's about, once again, providing that psychological safety that we are in the long run with you. You know, we are not in our ivory towers. We are all working for the same mission, right? We are all working for the same mission. It's just that it's an entire jigsaw puzzle. You know, whenever you have one or two parts missing, the puzzle is not complete. You know, so I think that's important that, you know, I do that with my team. My CEO does it with the entire population of the publishing group. And everybody is just so connected. Every Wednesday, I look forward to those meetings.
And there's 500 people in that one meeting.
500 people, Prabhuji.
Wow.
You know, I'd just like to draw an analogy to what happened about 1.5 weeks ago, when His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj was addressing more than 500, maybe around 2,000 devotees at one go. You know, that's the type of town halls which happens in corporations. So Giriraj Maharaj was addressing, you know, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj's illness. You know, he was having an open conversation with his disciples, with the wider congregation. I thought it was so good. It was so important. You know, it was so important for a leader to step in and provide guidance and to provide solace and to provide courage and to provide confidence to the entire team. So I think, you know, our organization is doing a great job. You know, with all honesty, I think we are doing a great job. You know, 2,000 leaders he was able to address at one go, and he was taking questions, you know, and he was so calm. I just love that, you know.
It's wonderful to hear some appreciation and encouragement. And I think a lot of us are recognizing.
It's easy to blaspheme an organization, but at the same time, I think it's important for us to start looking at the positives within us. Because in any organization, there will always be, you know, small specks of black, but yeah, not black, but small specks of, you know, brickbats. But I think it's important for us to look at things much, much more optimistically, objectively, etc. I think we are doing a great job.
So that's a nice segue then. How can we take advantage of the good job we're doing now and parlay that into the future? What opportunities are there for our ISKCON community going forward that this COVID has set up?
Great question, Prabhuji, great question. I think you will recall we spoke about Blue Ocean strategy.
Absolutely,
in
yeah.
Our classes.
I've got the book.
Yeah. So
maybe you can share the idea of Blue Ocean first. That's a really helpful concept. I think it can be, you know, concisely presented also.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, you know, the people whom we are addressing, the pain points of which stakeholder, which customer are we addressing today? You know, and looking at, is there a space which is not being addressed today, which we could easily leapfrog into, right? So, for example, during this COVID crisis, you know, I was really impressed with this couple, and I like to call them out. You know, Amarendra Prabhu and Sukritri Mataji from Chennai. They were holding an 18-day seminar on Gita Made Easy. And it was not meant for the devotees. Not at all for the devotees. It was for well-wishers, for newcomers, completely newcomers. You know, so this is a couple who actually took advantage of this Blue Ocean strategy, you know, coming up with something which was so simple, allowing newcomers to realize the highest order philosophy, highest order spirituality in a non-threatening manner. You know, that is Blue Ocean strategy. You know, going beyond who our immediate clientele is. You know, and you know, while I have been doing my own small little programs, you know, I have not lost touch with some of those participants who came for my earlier programs and who have stopped coming. And I realized that during this COVID, I was able to reconnect with many of these lost devotees, lost participants. I think we should reconnect with people. Case in point is a very, very senior nurse in one of the most important hospitals in Singapore. A Chinese lady, not an Indian. So she had been coming for our classes, and she came for a few Bhagavatam sessions, and then she just stopped. And then I reached out to her, telling her that look, we'll be having this classes again, on a daily basis. You might want to consider coming back. And she came back, and she's with us for the past 65 days now, every day without fail. Even when she's in the operating theater, you can actually see her hearing to the class, really participating, etc. So I think for me, this has been a wonderful time to reconnect with lost devotees. And Prabhu, I really marvel the project which you have been working on, bringing mindfulness, spirituality, etc. to the masses. I think it's time when ISKCON maybe might want to look at a new pillar around, maybe call it a school of happy and mindful living. There's so much of research today, look at Richard Davidson, Joe Dispenza, a lot of research around genomenology, plasticity of the brain, which basically tells you about, what mindfulness can actually do to a participant. And these are all, disparate zeros. If we can bring Krishna into this equation, that would be the one in front of that hundreds of zeros. I think there is a lot of hunger today, and no one can actually do a better job than us, frankly. I'm actually doing quite a lot of research around this and trying to see what I could do to bring to, some of my participants. I think that is one big area where, we should be really focused on. Because we are really addressing the why. A lot of secular organizations are able to teach you the methods, but then it only reaches a certain stage. When you add the why to it, it just leapfrogs to the next level. So I think.
And in your professional experience, you see a world opening up to these ideas more so on an organizational level.
Yes. So I can tell you, because right now when we are in discussions with large companies, large, big technology companies, they tell us that stress is a big issue. Mental health is a big issue. In all of these organizations, it's a big, big, big issue. They are not able to address it. I mean, you can speak about secular kind of mindfulness exercises, etc., but it only reaches a certain level. I'm really excited about this, and I'm just waiting. I want to embark on this maybe in the next 5 years when I retire from this particular position. I think there's a lot of opportunity for ISKCON.
In 5 minutes, Prabhu, you and I just continue talking. You don't have to wait 5 years.
But I mean, and the Huffington Post. So I can't remember what's her name. Is it Arena Huffington Post? Huffington.
Yeah, Ariana Huffington.
Ariana Huffington. She's been doing a lot of work around this, but again, it is secular.
Yes.
There's a lot which we can actually do. Come up with a solid framework around this. Maybe why not start with the secular side of things and then add the spirituality element of it later on. And I think another way which we should be really focused on is, another avenue we should be really focused on is, how do we go about engaging stakeholders in altruistic activities? I mean, if you look at during this pandemic, so much of goodwill has been created in India amongst the devotees. I think it's like, hundreds of millions of plates of prasadam has been distributed to, migrant workers, displaced workers, etc. And the wider community is coming together to assist ISKCON. I think that's another big opportunity for us to continue in this mission of Prabhupada. Even if you look at Pattaya, there's a lot of good work which the devotees in Pattaya are doing. So most importantly, I feel, if you look at today's world, we really need to move out of our stereotype preaching. I'm always so inspired by, the works of Jay Shetty, the works of Gaur Gopal Prabhu, His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, Gauranga Prabhu, even yourself, your harmony collection, and the way you have come up with short snippets of the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, etc. That's what is really important in today's world. It's really reaching out to the masses, reaching out to address the pain points of people.
So now, as
Prabhuji, we have all of that. We have all of the sacred and secret ingredients. It's about packaging it together.
Now, a question there, because from the corporate world, many devotees who are concerned about those avenues of outreach, right? They don't recognize how the kind of touching the pain points of a person in the mundane world can bring them to a place of deep Krishna consciousness. Sometimes there seems to be a kind of gap there. And so they might be attracted to us when the pain point is being addressed. But the ultimate point of accepting Krishna, how do we bring someone to that? Are there lessons from the corporate world about how that funnel works?
I think it's important for us to sometimes leave the customer to make decisions. It's like telling ourselves, Krishna will decide when that person would come. I mean, how many lifetimes did we take? I think it's important for us to imbibe whatever we can in these people and then leave it to them. I think everyone needs some safe space. That is my opinion. And, part of my role is also sales, right? Lead generation, etc. It reaches a stage where you can bring the customer to the stream and you need him to drink the water, or you need her to drink the water. You can't force the horse to drink the water. So I think from our side, we do whatever is required and then leave it to Krishna. So it's very important that we learn from the Bhagavad Gita that, we should not be attached to the results, right?
Jai. Wonderful points.
Do the best of your ability and then leave the rest to the Lord.
So,
and what is the best insurance policy? At least the person will continue in the next life. Or maybe we will continue in our next life.
Yeah, at least it'll put a vote in for our own efforts being able to carry forward.
That's right. Yeah.
So any closing ideas, Prabhu, that you'd like to touch on for us around this opportunity of COVID and the lessons you're seeing in the corporate culture that our own organization, our spiritual community can take forward?
Communicate. Break down barriers. Important for us to adapt, innovate, and thrive. There's a lot of good stuff which we are doing. Frankly, there is a lot of good stuff. I mean, if I look at the other spiritual organizations today, none of them are close to the impact which we are creating. I mean, look at the classes which, all the spiritual masters are organizing. I know for certain that my spiritual master, he has at least an average of 3 to 4 Zoom classes on a daily basis. And, lots of new people are coming for those classes. Our outreach in terms of Food for Life, we are doing a great job over there. We are making the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita really relevant for today. So I think we are doing a great job. of course, we always need to put on a new pair of lens to look at things. And we have that maturity of looking at it from that angle. Yeah, I think it's important for us to also be vulnerable and showcase this vulnerability that, we are not messiahs. We are not,
holier than thou.
Yeah, we are all fallible.
Mm.
So, whenever I'm teaching my people, I tell them, yeah, this is, from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm trying to live this. There are a lot of flaws in me. So please don't think that, I'm living this. No, we are all trying. We are all struggling. And I think in today's open world, we have to be very, very, very mindful about what we speak, because it can be construed wrongly. People do not want to see the context around which something was spoken. So, I think last week or 1 or 2 weeks ago, there has been some hue and cry around this social media influencer, devotee influencer, who spoke something which really hurt a lot of people. It might have been spoken based on a certain context to address a particular issue, a particular problem, but I don't think he was exercising mindfulness while he was speaking. So everybody wants, sorry for the wrong word usage. A lot of the devotees today, the younger generation, they want to be, known on the social media, etc. We have to be very, very careful. I think they need to go through some proper education on what are the do's and don'ts, how to conduct themselves on social media. This is no joke, because whatever has been captured will remain forever.
And that's training that most corporations provide their people, isn't it?
Correct. So I think, because let's not forget, these individuals, these devotees are representing the movement. They are representing the movement. So whatever they do will have great repercussions on the movement. I mean, the public is myopic. They don't want to look at things from a helicopter point of view. Oh, this is just said by one person. This is said by a representative from this organization.
Yes.
So I think it's important for us to emphasize to all of this young generation, social media
mavens.
Yeah, that it's important to be very, very mindful. Always think 10 times before you say anything. There's this big thing. These social media influencers are big, even in Singapore. Not the devotee community, but amongst artists and etc. They get into trouble very, very often, and the public is always all out to sensationalize whatever is being said. I think if we can handle that part of it, we will grow by leap and bounds as an organization too. There's just so much of good which ISKCON has. There's just so much of good which Srila Prabhupada has given us. I think it's all about packaging it, repackaging it, curating it correctly for the masses.
Beautiful. I want to end there, Prabhu, because it's such a hopeful message, and I feel the sincerity of your appreciation for what Prabhupada and his faithful followers have given you, and the earnestness of your enthusiasm to share that. And you have the professional credential. You've given yourself the time and patience to develop all of these things. So really grateful for your time today, sharing all these things with us from the SBT page. And I think I'd be happy to have you on again soon to talk about this particular topic of public and social media presentation. It's actually something that has come up in our group already. And so, maybe internally. And so maybe when we share it with the larger devotee community, you could be a part of that conversation also.
Always a pleasure, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for having me.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Padma Locana.
Pleasure speaking with you. I look forward to meeting you soon. The last we met was in Vrindavan.
That's true.
Right in front of Dinabandhu Prabhu's room.
a blessed place. Zoom can never replace such connections. So hopefully we do get to have a few more of those in the future also.
Right. I was supposed to be there at the Los Angeles Ratha Yatra this year, and I can't travel.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu, for being with us. Thank you, everyone who is watching from the SBT page. Please remember to like and follow us, just in case you haven't yet. We're always happy and hoping to bring more thoughtful devotees like Padma Locana Krishna to you, so you can feel enthused about all the wonderful things happening in Srila Prabhupada's movement. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.